In recent years, the push to make Australia a regional financial services hub has never been far below the surface, but so far it hasn't happened. The latest to weigh into the debate is leading management consultant Pottinger, and its Joint Chief Executive Nigel Lake joins me in the studio now. Nigel, welcome to the program.
Pleasure to be here.
What's prompted you to get involved in this debate now?
Look, we think it's incredibly important to think about how Australia fits within the world of Asia. And clearly we are already part of Asia, and the view from other parts of the world is that we are firmly and squarely in the Asian region. The question is how we do that.
You're arguing that Australia would benefit greatly from a merger between the Australian Securities Exchange and either the Toronto Stock Exchange, the Nasdaq in the US, or the London Stock Exchange. What do you see as those benefits?
Look, I think it goes back to the wide question, which is Australia as an economy needs to build some new pillars of strength alongside its resources industry to drive growth over the medium to long term. One incredibly important part of that is financial services. And if you look at what's happened with stock exchange consolidation around the world, it's been a pretty tortuous story. But the simple observation is there's likely to be three major stock exchange groups that emerge. They will be centred on New York, Toronto, and Nasdaq in the Americas, and three exchanges in Europe. So there will be three in Asia. We can be one of those exchanges through one of those partnerships coming about. It doesn't really matter which one it is.
Well, the ASX under the former Chief Executive Robert Elstone's leadership understood the need to merge, and in fact it tried to merge with the Singapore Stock Exchange, but the government knocked it back. So can a merger really happen?
Look, we think absolutely that it can. I guess the Pottinger perspective is for Singapore to acquire exchange outright puts us at the end of a spoke, or could have put us at the end of a spoke in Asia and not really as a hub. If we were to partner with one of the major exchanges from the Americas, or indeed with the UK exchange, then we can become part of what is truly a global exchange. And those transactions can be mergers of equals. One of the challenges, of course, is there are some issues of bragging rights, and that, of course, if you're, e.g. Nasdaq, you are one of the world's largest exchanges in terms of profile. In terms of market value, actually smaller than the Australian exchange. So the relative sizes are there in terms of market cap, but not necessarily in terms of people's perceptions of how important they are.
Now, you believe that a merged stock exchange would be much more diversified than the ASX is at the moment, which you also believe would be a big boost to Australia's high-tech industries and create what you call a Silicon Harbour to match Silicon Valley in the US. Why do you believe that?
Look, I think this is a really interesting question. And at Pottinger, we've done a lot of work around areas like technology. And of course, Australia has a history of great innovation in areas like technology and healthcare, agricultural science. Many of those businesses, when they seek capital to expand on a large scale, go offshore, and they do go to Silicon Valley and US markets because those markets are very broad and deep. If we can persuade more of those organisations to stay here as they commercialise, even if their businesses are offshore, then we can really reap the benefits of that over time. And of course, we have a very large pool of capital in Australia, third largest pool of managed funds in the world, which is available to support that.
What do you see as the government's role in creating the conditions for this Silicon Harbour?
Look, I think that the starting point is partly simply self-belief and making sure that as we engage with Asia and we think about ourselves as a country, we behave as a large financial centre and believe that we sort of deserve the right to be there. That's a simple thing that we can do. From a government policy perspective, I think there are some things which can be done to provide an easier pathway for organisations, and there may well be some fiscal measures, some tax, a different tax regime which could be developed, which gives people more of a return when they develop these kinds of businesses, so long as they stay here rather than disappear offshore.
Now, the government will like you because you believe the national broadband network, which is being built at the moment, is an essential tool for creating this hub. But why do you believe that?
Look, there's been an enormous amount said on the broadband network. There's a simple point, which is demand for data for bandwidth over time has increased exponentially, something like 35% a year since 1980. If our population had grown that fast, we'd have a population of over 200 billion people, which makes the point that these growth rates are hard to get your head around. As far as the NBN goes, or just call it fibre to the home and fibre to businesses for most organisations, it makes an enormous difference in your ability to communicate. It opens up a whole range of things you can do because it is a two-way connection with the same speed both ways that you can't do over ADSL. And people may say, well, we can do similar things on wireless. Physics says you can't.
Well, just finally then, you're not the first person to come up with some very good ideas on how to turn Australia into a regional financial services hub. It hasn't happened yet. How do we make it happen?
Look, I was in Beijing last week and talking about precisely this with a group of Chinese people who see very I guess, important benefits for themselves in there being a better connection between the countries. And one of the things I think is simply the understanding between people of what each other needs. So we look at China, for example, and we see a country that is exciting and that has a lot of growth. They look at Australia and they see a country which is exciting because it has got a high degree of stability economically. And so there is some risk diversification for them. So I think there's a lot that can be done to improve just simply our understanding of what China and other partners in the region are looking for, and similarly for them to understand us better.
Well, Nigel Lake, some very interesting thoughts there. Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, good to be here.